I always thought that sharing a room with my stepbrother would be temporary. It was supposed to be a minor inconvenience, a logistical arrangement that would only last until our parents figured out a better solution, but weeks turned into months, and now a year later it had become our normal. I should have minded more. I should have protested. After all, I was 23, a medical student drowning in coursework, late night study sessions, and the occasion shift at the hospital. Having an 18-year-old boy in my space should have been a nightmare, but the problem wasn't his presence, it was my growing awareness of it. It started subtly, like the way I began noticing his habits, the way he left the lamp on when he thought I was asleep, quietly flipping through a book, the way he would stay up with me even if he had nothing to do, just because he didn't want me to feel alone in those exhausting nights of endless reading, the way he stretched in the mornings, his t-shirt riding up slightly, revealing just a hint of his stomach. I should have ignored these things. I tried to. Our room was small, divided by a curtain that offered little privacy. It was a makeshift solution my father and stepmother had come up with after they got married and decided we should all live together under one roof. They hadn't expected their children to be thrown into such close quarters, hadn't considered that two people who barely knew each other might have to learn the rhythms of one another's existence so intimately. At first we were awkward around each other. We spoke only when necessary, exchanging polite pleasantries, careful not to step over the invisible line that separated our spaces. But over time something shifted. There were nights when I'd hear him toss and turn in his bed, restless, lost in thoughts he never voiced. There were mornings when I'd wake up to find him already gone, a coffee waiting for me on my desk. No, just the silent gesture of care. And then there were the moments that felt like accidents but lingered too long to be coincidences. Like the time he walked in, just as I was changing, his eyes flickering away too late, his cheeks flushing as he stammered an apology, or the times our hands would brush when we passed each other in the small space neither of us pulling away immediately. One evening as I sat on my bed surrounded by books and notes, exhausted beyond belief, he spoke up. "You should take a break," he murmured, glancing up from his phone. "I can't, I sighed. Too much to do." He got up and walked over, picking up one of my textbooks, flipping through the pages lazily. "You're always studying, doesn't it ever drive you crazy?" I gave him a tired smile. "Medicine isn't exactly forgiving." He hesitated, then sat down beside me to close. The curtain between our beds was pulled back that night, and the small distance between us suddenly felt non-existent. "I don't get it," he admitted. "How do you do it? How do you not break under all that pressure?" It turned to look at him, really look at him. He had grown up in the past years, shedding the last traces of boyhood. His jawline was sharper, his eyes more serious, his presence more solid. "I do break," he whispered. "I just don't let anyone see it." The silence stretched between us, thick with something unspoken, and then before I could stop myself he leaned my head against his shoulder. It was nothing, a brief exhausted moment of comfort, but he stiffened like the contact meant more to him than it should have. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead I let myself stay there just for a little longer than was appropriate, and when I finally sat up I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch, something unsure, hesitant, and undeniably real. That was the moment I realized the truth. This wasn't just about sharing a room anymore. This was something far more dangerous. After that night something changed. We didn't talk about it. We pretended nothing had happened, but the air between us felt charged. Every movement calculated, every GL. "It's too brief for too long." He started going to bed later than usual, waiting until I was fully settled before turning off his side of the lamp. I started being hyper-aware of the way he moved around the room, the way he changed his shirt when he thought I wasn't looking, the way his voice softened when he spoke to me, and the worst part, one liked it. I liked the quiet, unspoken tension that lingered in there. I liked the way he noticed things about me that no one else did. I liked that he stayed up with me even though he had no reason to, but I couldn't like it. I shouldn't. One night I came home late for my hospital shift. My body ached, my mind was heavy, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed. But as I opened the door to our room I found him still awake, sitting on his bed with his laptop. "You're late," he said, his voice low, almost accusing. I blinked at him. "Since when do you care?" His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Instead he watched as I walked over to my desk, dropping my bag onto the chair. I felt his gaze on me as I unbuttoned my coat, letting it slip off my shoulders. He looked away. I don't know why, but that single moment, his deliberate choice to look away, made my heart pound. I should have ignored. Instead, I decided to test something. I walked over to his bed and sat at the edge. What are you working on? His finger shoved over the keyboard for a second before he closed the laptop. Nothing important. We were too close. I could see the way his throat moved when he swallowed, the way his hands curled into fists on his lap, the way his breath hitched just slightly when I leaned in the tiniest bit. This feels weird, doesn't it? I murmured. He exhaled sharply like he'd been holding something in. Yep, it should have laughed it off. I should have moved away. I should have done anything but what I did next. Instead, I reached out and took his hand. It was a mistake, a terrible, beautiful mistake, because the second our fingers touched, he let out a breath, one that sounded like relief, like frustration, like everything he had been holding back. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead, I let my fingers tangle with his, let myself feel the warmth of his skin against mine. His grip was frightened, unsure, but he didn't let go. Tell me to stop, he whispered. I couldn't because I didn't want him to. Instead, I looked up at him, my heart pounding against my ribs, and for the first time since we had started sharing this room, I realized the truth. We weren't just step siblings, we were something else, something that blurred the lines between right and wrong, and neither of us was willing to walk away from it. That night, I barely slept after I let go of his, and I had turned away quickly, pretending nothing had happened, but sleep never came. I could hear him shifting in his bed, restless just like me. I kept my back to him, hoping that if I didn't see him I didn't think about the way his fingers had tightened around mine, about the way his voice had trembled when he told me to stop, as if he had been hoping I wouldn't. But I did stop because I had to, didn't I? The next morning I woke up ill. The room was quiet, and when I turned over I saw that his bed was empty. A note sat on my desk, scrawled in his messy handwriting, went out. Be back later, don't forget to eat something. I stared at it for a long time. Had he left to avoid me? Had I made things too complicated? I didn't know what I wanted the answer to be. I spent the day pretending to be normal, studying, cleaning, making coffee, ignoring the way my hands shook whenever I thought about last night. By the time he came back it was late afternoon. I was sitting on my bed, a book open in my lap, but I wasn't reading. I was waiting when he walked, and his eyes met mine for just a second before he looked away. Hey, he said. Hey. An awkward silence stretched between us. He tossed his bag out to his bed, rubbing the back of his neck. About last night, he started. It was nothing. The words came out too quickly, too forced. I wanted them to be true, but they weren't. His jaw tightened. Was it? I swallowed hard. We were just tired, that's all. Hal let out a breath, shaking his head like he was frustrated. Right, neither of us believed it. For the rest of the evening we tiptoed around each other, acting like everything was fine, but it wasn't. I could feel it every time our eyes met, every time our hands almost brushed, every time I caught him looking at me when he thought I wouldn't notice. And then that night it happened again. I woke up to the sound of his breathing, so softer and even. I turned over in bed, squinting in the dim light. He was sitting up, his back against the wall, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. Can't sleep, I whispered. His head turned, and for a second I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. I keep thinking about it, he admitted. I didn't have to ask what he meant. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. The curtain between our beds was pulled halfway back, just like it always was, a thin line, a fragile boundary, one that neither of us wanted to cross, but neither of us wanted to keep anymore. I don't know what to do, he murmured, his voice barely audible. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I do. I should have told him to stop. I should have told him we couldn't. But when he looked at me like that, like I was the only thing in the world that made sense to him, I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Instead, I whispered, meet Helen's heavy waiting. Then before I could talk myself out of it, I reached for his hand again, just like before, and this time neither of us let go. One evening when I came home from university, he proposed to me. It started with a simple offer. You're always complaining about your back, he said one evening, stretching out on his bed while I sat hunched over my desk, rubbing my neck. I turned, raising an eyebrow at him. Help, a massage, he said, sitting up. Come on, you're practically living at the hospital, then coming home and studying all night. It's no wonder your back hurts. I hesitated. The logical part of me, the one that knew this was dangerous, wanted to refuse, but another part of me, the one that had been losing the battle for weeks now, stayed silent. It's not a big deal, headed quickly, as if sensing my hesitation. I used to do it for my mom sometimes when she had back pain. You'll feel better, I promise. That should have made it easier to say yes. It should have have reminded me that this was just a normal harmless gesture. So why did my pulse quicken? Why did I feel like if I let this happen there would be no turning back? I swallowed hard. Okay, just for a little bit. He patted the space in front of him. Sit here. I moved slowly, climbing onto his bed. Sitting with my back to him, I pulled my hair over one shoulder, my hands twisting together in my lap. I felt the mattress shift as he adjusted behind me. For a moment there was nothing, just silence, just the awareness of how close we were, and then his hands touched my shoulders. I inhaled sharply. He didn't say anything. He just started moving his fingers, pressing gently, at first testing. I tried to stay still, but the first roll of his thumbs against my muscles made me exhale shakily. I hadn't realized just how much tension I was carrying until I felt it start to melt away under his touch. His hands were strong but careful. He worked slowly, his fingers kneading into the knots at the base of my neck, then gliding down to my shoulders. You're so tense, he murmured. How do you even move around with your back like this? Held out a breathless laugh. Medical students don't get the luxury of functioning properly. His hands moved lower, pressing into the space between my shoulder blades. My body reacted before I could stop it, relaxing under his touch. I shouldn't have let this happen. I should have told him to stop, but I didn't. His fingers found another spot near my spine, and I made the mistake of letting out a quiet, unguarded sound, something between a sigh and a hum of relief. His hands stilled for just a second. The air between us changed. I felt him inhale, slow and controlled, then he kept going, but his movements were different now, slower, more deliberate. His hands skimmed over my shoulders again, his thumbs grazing along the curve of my neck. A shiver ran down my spine. I swallowed hard. This is really good, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah. His voice was lower now, softer. Told you. I felt him shift behind me. His breath was closer to my ear now, and I swore I could hear his heartbeat. Or maybe it was mine. He pressed his thumbs gently into the base of my skull, massaging small circles, and I bit my lip to keep from making another sound. Everything about this was dangerous. Everything about this should have made him pull away, but I didn't. Instead, I let myself lean back just slightly, my body betraying me. I felt him go still. Neither of us spoke, neither of us moved. We just sat there, breathing the same air, hovering on the edge of something. Neither of us had the strength to stop. And then in the quiet he murmured something so softly I almost didn't care catch it. I don't think I can pretend anymore. I turned my head slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. Pretend what? I whispered. His fingers were still resting against my shoulders, his grip light but warm. His gaze flickered down to my lips just for a second before meeting my eyes again. He looked toward like he was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if you should jump. I should have stopped this. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. I just waited for whatever came next, and whatever it was, I knew I wouldn't stop. But his fingers still rested on my shoulders, his touch no longer just a massage. It was something else now, something heavier. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke, but in that silence everything was loud. I could hear the unsteady rhythm of my own breathing, the way my pulse thr in my ears. I could feel his presence behind me, close, too close and yet not close enough. His hands tightened slightly against my skin just for a second before loosening again, like he was testing himself, testing me. He turned my head slowly, just enough to see him over my shoulder. The air between us shifted. His gaze flickered down just for a heartbeat to my lips, and that was when I knew this was going to happen. I should have stopped it. I didn't move, first leaning in just enough to raise the space between us, just enough to brush his lips against mine, light, tentative, a question. I froze, not because I didn't want it, but because I did. His breath was warm against my skin, and I felt the hesitance in him, the uncertainty, the sigh, and he plea for me to pull away if this was too much. I did. Instead I let my eyes flutter shut, let me lips part slightly, and that was all the answer he needed. His fingers slid from my shoulders to my arms, his touch light, almost like he was afraid to hold in too tightly. The kiss stayed soft, barely there, but it felt like everything, like a line being crossed, like something that had been waiting to happen finally slipping into place. I turned more fully toward him now, and the shift caused our lips to press together just a fraction more, just enough for a sharp breath to escape him. The sound sent a shiver down my spine. This was real, this was happening, and I didn't want to stop. His hands hesitated, like he didn't know if he should pull me closer, like he was still waiting for me to push him away. I couldn't. Instead I leaned in just the tiniest bit more, deepening the kiss without meaning to, letting my fingers brush against his wrist. That was all it took. His restraint wavered and his hand came up, fingers grazing my jaw. Before sliding into my hair, his grip was gentle but firm, like he was still trying to convince himself this was real. The kiss was still light, still careful, but it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Seconds stretched into something unmeasurable, and then just as suddenly as it had been done, he pulled away, not far, just enough to break the kiss, just enough for us to sit there forehead to forehead, breathing the same air, both of us caught in the weight of what we had just done. I opened my eyes slowly. His were already on me, dark, searching, like he was trying to figure out if we had just made a mistake, like he was waiting for me to be the one to say it, to undo it, to take it back. But I couldn't, I wouldn't. I swallowed hard, my lips still tingling from the kiss, exhaled shakily, like he was struggling to find words. He started, but I shook my head, cutting him off before he could say something that would shatter this moment. Don't, I whispered. He hesitated, and then slowly he nodded. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke, but we both knew nothing would ever be the same again.